talk with one another, though.
Okay. Lots of people here already.
Yeah.
Hi, Kushbu. How are you?
I think I'm awesome.
Yes, you are awesome. That we already knew.
Yes, I agree too.
Hey, Nancy.
Hey, you're looking good, Nick.
You too.
Is that one of your paintings behind you?
Yes. It's Marie Antoinette.
Oh, good.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Creative at the moment. I've been having such a lovely time. Yeah.
I see you, Sandy.
Hello.
Hey.
Okay. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Skip. How are you doing?
Good. I was just getting us so that we're functional on YouTube. And we already have a few people watching us on YouTube. So, and here's Joss coming aboard. So it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon for Joss. It's absolutely luxurious.
It's a perfect time.
Yeah, because she's usually getting here at 5 in the morning her time. Hi, Joss. She made it. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so Tim can't make it tonight because of being with his sister in the mountains tonight, and we've gathered together to hear Nicole's story. So I'm going to do my best to leave this on speaker view so that we have the speaker looking larger in the screen. How do I? Okay. So there she is. Okay, that's Marie Antoinette. Wow, that's awesome. Now I see you.
Yeah.
Wow.
With my glasses on.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So
Are we starting or
not quite yet. I just want to ask Art, did you receive the audiobook I sent you? I hope you did. And so that's a question for Art Patterson. And meanwhile, we are going to hear Nicole's story tonight. So Nicole, without further ado, I'm going to not interrupt you for at least the next hour. I'm going to try anyway.
Wow.
So tell us about yourself and your life and where you live.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this space. It's really, it feels a bit scary, but the right time. And yeah, and I just like really charged up and.
No worries. Once you get rolling, you'll get in the flow and no problem.
Okay. So what I did before I started was I've got this little altar over there, and I lit some incense and a candle, and I picked out gift of all these little pieces of paper with messages on them, and every time I do something important, I pick one out. And what I got today was every crisis in life makes you bitter or better. It's your choice. So that was a really nice way to start, I thought, and a really nice message. And so my life story, I live in Australia, and I was born in Sydney, and I was born in Eastwood in Sydney, and in 1965, and I have an older sister. And my childhood was really sort of, I was very free. I was wandering around in paddocks. It was different to the way it is now. It was very, I felt loved, and my parents were working class people who they had a business. They had a spare parts business. They sold spare parts for cars, and they were like partners in business, and they were quite sort of, I guess you would say, pretty happy together. And we had materially, I had a lot of things. We lived in the best house. We had wonderful friends. I played with the kids across the road, and we had this street that was really like a community, and we had step parties, and we had dinners, and we'd go and swim in people's pools, and there were no fences. It was all very open. And my parents had a holiday house in Terrigal. So on the weekends, we started going up there, and my parents loved to go to the beach and fish and things like that. And my parents were very, they started with nothing. When they got married, they went and stayed with my father's mother, who lived in a sort of pretty modest terrace house in Sydney, and they had no electric light. So my parents kind of got together, and my father was quite good at maths, and my mother was pretty smart too. She was like a bookkeeper. So they were really clever, and I guess, really worked together well, and made, were quite successful in business. And our house was always, we used to have Sunday lunches, and it was a really lovely childhood. But there was also, it was tough in some areas. Like my father's mother lived with us, and because my mother worked, a lot of the time I spent with my father's mum and my mother's mum. And, looking back, I was brought up by some women, that were pretty sort of stoic and strong. Like my mother was a really intriguing person, and she was quite, she was like she wasn't a feminist. She was, but she was like that, she loved her work, and she got her sense of self from that. And my parents were really, they loved to party. They loved to, our house was always, the kids we had a TV room, and all the kids would go and watch TV, and all the parents would be out, having parties and drinking, and there was a lot of drinking. And my mother had stuff must have started to come up for her at a certain point, and she was an alcoholic. And so when my parents semi-retired, and we moved to the Central Coast, and it was a bit of a culture shock for me, but I kind of adapted but my mother was emotionally absent when I was a teenage girl. She was quite sort of, she had troubles, you know, she had issues, and she was pretty depressed at certain points in time. And it was really difficult for my father, who was a really sort of expressive man who, you know, he was quite emotional. He was quite sort of, he was a really hands-on dad. But there was friction there between them. And I think he didn't know what to do about it, but it really affected him. And because he really loved my mother, you know, and my mother was a bit, you know, she would go into these spaces where she was completely disassociated. And I later found out that it was like how we coped with it was that my sister, who was older, she was really hard for her because she was older and she was kind of like protective of me. And, you know, it took away some of her autonomy as a child, I think. And we adapted to it our own way, but I was in denial of that for a long time. Like as I was growing up, I couldn't handle it. And I know what I did was that I sort of put it over there so that I could get on with my life. And
So you were in denial of the alcoholism?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I sort of like I kind of internalized it, and I was you know, I didn't know what to do, how to deal with it, you know, for a long time. And but I was the first person in my family to go to university. I went to art college, and I really loved school, and I loved creative things. And my art teacher at high school, I was wagging school one day, and walking home, I was walking, it must have been after lunch or something, and I thought, oh, you know, and I just walked out of school, and he picked me up and said, I'll take you home. So he dropped me home, and he came in and he spoke to my parents, and he said, oh, did you know that your daughter's wagging school today? And also she's a really creative person, and she's really interested in art, and she spends all her lunchtime in the art room. And so, you know, and I think that could be something that she could do in the future. And so he was really supportive. And his name was Peter Conley. And so I did pursue that. And my mother helped me. She took me to the art gallery. She took me up to the university with a portfolio, and I was taken into I didn't follow the normal channel, but I somehow got into this art college. And it was in Newcastle, so it wasn't on the Central Coast. So it was a really amazing time, because I got to sort of have this other life. And my life on the Central Coast was surfing, swimming, like I was really physically active. And then I had this other life in Newcastle at art college with all these really unusual people, and you know, it was a different environment. So I really loved that. And but I never really, like, I always felt like a square peg in a round hole. I was like, oh God, this is crazy, you know, what am I doing here? You know, anyway, but it was really the people that really kept me going. And so then I kept doing that, and back then I did a Bachelor of Arts, and then you could do a 12-month diploma of education and become a teacher. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. So I did that, and as it turned out, I was actually a pretty good teacher, like, because I was, I don't know, I just kind of fell into it. Everything lined up, and I got work. There was a lot of work. So I, 10 years later, I was back to the Central Coast, and I ended up, my first teaching appointment was at my old school at the Entrance High, which was bizarre because some of the same teachers were still there. And they were like, "Oh, hello, Nicole." It was really weird. But it was great. It was really good. And then the biggest thing that happened at that time was my father died when I was 30. He died suddenly by that time my parents had moved to Queensland, and they were fully retired then, and there was too much drinking, because my parents were really out of control in that regard at that stage, because I think they retired too early and it just all went kaput. Anyway, so my father died, drowned in the back of where they lived. It was on Easter Sunday, and I got this phone call from my mum, and my world changed. Like, it was a big shift in me. So I went to Queensland, sort of, we were all together. My mother was falling apart. She was drinking. It was a really dark time. And I remember thinking, this is really weird, but quite deep. But I do remember just feeling so like he was my rock and he had left me.
And so this was when you were 30 or 13?
Yeah, 30. This is when I was
30.
30.
Okay.
Yeah. And with that, what also came rushing in was this realization that my mother's alcoholism was something that I hadn't integrated up until then. And so I stayed in Queensland for a while, and I remember going to the phone book and I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous. I rang somebody and they said, "Oh, you come to this meeting." And it turned out it was just around the corner from where I was. And it was on that night. So I turned up to it wasn't an AA meeting, it was called Al-Anon. It was children of parents who are alcoholics. And as you might know, that's part of Carl Jung had something to do with that, which I didn't know then. But so I walked into this meeting and I felt this feeling of like, oh God, all these people are like me. And something clicked in, and I thought, well, I've got to do this program and I've got to do this, So I started, and I originally wanted to get my mother there, but then I realized, oh no, that's not going to happen. I'll just do it myself, So I did, and then I went back to the Central Coast where I was living, and I went to these Al-Anon meetings, pretty regularly, because it was really, a lot of stuff was coming out of me. There was so much. It was just part of an awakening, a real, a really gross psychological thing for me to do the 12 steps and to really be held in that space and work through that and figure out, you know, like I used to have nightmares, and I used to have insomnia, and I had, sometimes I had funny things would happen with people, or, you know, things would happen, and I wouldn't know why this was happening, and it was hidden from me. It was like it was. So anyway, I think I really embraced it, and then it also sort of, I did like a massive review, because part of one of the 12 steps is you take a personal inventory of your life and yourself, and you make amends to all the people that you've harmed, and I did that. Like I actually did it. Like, and I got quite involved in it. And then I met, and I was living at the time, I was living in this house up on this mountain with this, backed onto a national park, and I really felt like my life was, like I was really in a good place. And my mum came to stay with me, I remember, for a few weeks, and she was still really lost, and I was able to say to her, which I was never able to say before, but I was able to say to her at one stage, you know, I said, well, the reason why you do this, Mum, is because you're an alcoholic. And she was like, am I? And I went, yeah. And like I did it with love. Like I didn't, you know, it wasn't sort of, and it was something about, because, you know, she used to smoke. My mother was a really gorgeous woman. Like she was tall, she was, you know, she had the blonde, beautiful boofed hair, and, you know, she was gorgeous. She was very attractive to men. She was, you know, she had this persona of the femme fatale, gorgeous bombshell. But she was just a normal person, you know, she had her own foibles and stuff. And anyway, we just formed we were able to, more love came into our relationship then, and it was really lovely. And then she went back and she moved to another house, and anyway, then I met my husband through some mutual friends, and I remember saying to myself, I'm not mucking around anymore with relationships. Remember like going, I'm not doing that. I'm going to, like, this is full on. This is the next, whatever the next thing is. It was like I was really, you know, invoking from the universe my dharma or my path, or, you know, what I really wanted to manifest in the world. And I met my husband, and we had this lovely kind of romantic couple of weeks, and he was going to France, and he bought this ticket. And so I thought, oh, well, okay, so I'll have some fun and he'll go to France. And, you know, so and he was living in Avoca. He was an architect. He was a musician, an incredible musician. He went to the conservatorium, played jazz. I just found him really fun, and, you know, he was kind, and I was just, you know, I was intrigued by this person, and it was pretty mutual. So anyway, he goes off to France, and I took him to the airport and said bye, you know, and then he said, I'll write to you. And so that was nice. And so I get these letters, and which I've still got, and I'm getting all these letters, and I remember saying to my mum once, she rang me, and I said, I think I've met the one. I remember saying that to her. She goes, really? I was like, yeah. Anyway, because the letters were just was a really beautiful way to move through a friendship, like, because he was telling me everything about, you know, what he was doing and where he was and what he was eating. And, you know, he was having this amazing sensual experience in, you know, all these different parts of France and driving around and it was about, I don't know, must have been 5 weeks in or something. And I was at the beach one day, and I lived in this house. You used to have to go up all these steps to get to the top after you get out of the car. So I had my head down and I was walking up the steps, and I'd been for a swim, and he was standing at the top of the stairs, just standing there. And I was like, wow, hello. And he said, yeah, I'm back. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And then he came inside, and he had rented out his house and to this person. And I said, oh, well, you'll have to stay here. And anyway, so, but it was kind of like, you know, we were adults. He was older. He was older. So he was 12 years older than me. So he basically said, I want to marry you and this is it. And I said, well, at first I said no, because I didn't think, I just was like, no. And then I thought, no, actually, why not go where you've always feared to go? You know, why are you sabotaging something? You know, I felt loved. So I just surrendered to it and said, yeah, okay, this is going to be amazing. and I actually did like feel like I was like, this is gonna be, and like, because I started thinking like, and like we'd be having breakfast or something, and I'd go, you know what, we can have the most amazing life together because of what we do. I'm an artist, you're an architect. We have, you know, we could have an amazing, this is going to be a great adventure. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I dived in 100%, and then we had Zoe, our daughter, and how that actually happened was my husband's family were quite, he was different to me. Like, he was more, well, you know, upper class family. They're well known in Sydney. My husband's grandfather was a famous Sydney architect, Donald Esplin. They've got books written about him. You know, they were quite a sort of extended family in Sydney, and big family of cousins and all that. And the Esplin boys all followed in the family footsteps. You know, it was very patriarchal. There was Ian, Don, John. All the boys were named the same names, and, you know, they all went to the same school. They did what they did, you know. But Ian was a bit of a sort of, he was at that time, you know, he was a little bit different to the rest, I thought. I don't know, like he was his own person. So we just got on with what we were doing, you know. And he said to me, oh, I'd like you to meet my mother, you know. And so I was like, okay. So that was a big deal. And but she was an amazing person. She was because she was really well educated, came from a aristocratic family. Her father was an engineer. Apparently in Mount Isa in Queensland, there's a museum, and there's a lot of information about her parents there, because they did lots of things. And her mother was a suffragette and all this sort of stuff. And
this was before or after you were married?
This was when I was married, just well, we weren't married at that stage, but he said to me, you know, you have to come and meet my family. So
Okay.
we went to Sydney. She was living in Sydney, and we went to meet her, and she thought I was fantastic, you know, the best thing since sliced bread. And we had a great relationship because she was, her husband had died probably 10 years before from Alzheimer's disease. And so she was living in this beautiful house in Vaucluse, and she used to work for CSIRO. So she had this cushy job, you know, she used to have a car, used to come and pick her up to take her to work, and, you know, and she was a pretty smart lady, you know, she was rocking her, you know, she was rocking it, you know, like, and she was, so she went back to university after she had the kids, and, you know, she was a doctor of philosophy and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, but she was really artistic, and we just connected, and we had our own relationship, which was lovely. And she thought it was great that Ian and I were together, and we weren't going to get married, but she was a bit miffed about that and made it very clear that, you know, that was not the way that things were to be done. And so anyway, so we did actually get married, and that was fine. And we did it the way we wanted to do it. Like, because I'm my own person, you know, so I take people's feedback, but I do what I want, you know, and I make it kind of, so we managed to do that. And we had Zoe, and we were so, he was really happy as a father. He was an incredible father. He was very hands-on. He was a really good provider, and you know, it was unconventional in a sense, because he wanted the things that he wanted, you know, he wanted to be an architect, and so I supported him in that, you know. And he went back to uni and got his you had to get certified to get registered as a proper architect, so he had to do his masters, and so he did that. And I didn't want to move out of the house that I was living in because I really liked it. And so we had Zoe there, and then after it got to a certain point and it was impractical, and so we moved into the house that he owned in Avoca. And it's, you know, a couple of weeks after I moved there, I thought, I should have done this. Why didn't I do this before? Because this is great, you know. And yeah, we had a really beautiful time there. It was a really, like, looking back, you know, it was a real time of innocence and just flourishing and frolicking around. And like, I was able to be with Zoe. Like, I kind of didn't work. I was just a full-time mum for 5 years, you know, and pursuing my art and supporting Ian. And we lived in this house that was, well, it belonged to him, but he was paying the mortgage when I met him. And it was his parents' house before that, because he purchased it from them at a certain point. Anyway, so, and, you know, like, his mother used to joke around and say, you know, call it the lean-to and the shack and this and that, because it was quite sort of dilapidated and it was falling down, and it was, but that's how architects are in Australia. Like, a lot of architects are like, because they don't get paid much, you know, like, so they, you know, they build all the houses and do all the stuff for the clients, but not necessarily for themselves. But anyway, but we had a plan. So and the plan was that we were going to build this house. So the whole time we were living in the the dilapidated house that had holes in the roof, and you know, it was twice there was a burst water main and it got flooded and all sorts of things, and it was held up underneath by these metal piers because it was it was on stilts. But it was a beautiful house on a lake at Avoca. You know, it's just a lovely spot. So we were really happy, and then I was quite successful with my art because I won a few art prizes, and my husband was also president of the community association because we wanted to do stuff in the community. And you know, we had lots of friends, like they used to call us the Esplin Power Pack because we were like this. We were like we would just like hatch a plan to do stuff, and then we'd do it. And then it was we just, yeah, that was really awesome, you know. And but my husband, you know, he worked really hard. Like he worked long hours, he worked from home, so he was, you know, had an office downstairs. You know, I guess I was following in my parents. They were like, you know, I kind of picked up some of the things that they were doing, you know, because I used to spend a lot of time with my parents in their workplace and stuff like that. So yeah, and I used to paint, but in the kitchen, and you know, like, and I had a studio at one stage at a different place, and it was going quite well. And then I went back to work part-time. And I was always interested in psychology. I was always interested in spiritual things. Always had this sense of what else is there, you know, like I was always sort of striving, or not striving, but like I would read lots of stuff, you know, and I was, you know, we used to hang out with interesting people, filmmakers. Yeah, I was interested in, I guess, like a lifelong learner, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah, we just had interesting friends. And, you know, with my husband's music, we had a really busy life, you know, and we supported and enhanced creative things and creative people. And I got interested in psychology, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? You know, like, I knew that the teaching thing was not, I was a bit disillusioned with it or something. I don't know. I never really fitted into that. It wasn't quite right. So anyway, so I decided that I was going to do this Gestalt course in Gestalt therapy. I got interested in, I read up about it and stuff. And I remember going into the interview and with this woman who was pretty awesome. And she said to me, she goes, "So Nicole," she said, "how are you going to support yourself when you're doing this course?" And it was a real, like, something flicked. I was like, oh my God, I've never thought of that. Wow, you know, like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna, you know, and it really struck me. And because I realized that it was a really deep process, and that it was going to be, yeah, you know, I thought I was just doing a course, but it was more, this is going to really unpack you and stuff, you know, like, so anyway, so I went home, and where was Zoe? That she must have been in high school by that stage. And I noticed that, you know, like my husband was getting a bit, well, we had ups and downs because as soon as the economy goes down, people don't want to build houses. You know, they don't want to spend money because it costs a lot of money to, you know, building a house costs a lot of money in Australia. It's really expensive to pay labor, and just running the business was, which I used to help my husband run the business. Like I was really supportive, and we used to have clients, and you know, and what would happen is you would, you know, by the end of the process, you after like 12 months of building this house for these people, you know, you get to know them quite well, and you go to there for dinner, and so the social and the professional got mixed together quite nicely, you know, and people liked me and thought I was a lovely person. So yeah, it was, and we were really successful at it. Like we were quite good at it, you know. But I remember at one stage saying to my husband, I said, because in 2006, we knocked down our house and built the new house because we'd saved up money. We got some money from the bank and we thought, right, we're going to do this. We're going to build the house. So that was a 12-month process, and it was amazing. It was quite stressful, but we knew what we were doing, and it was, it was a really happy time, but it was really stressful for my husband in some ways, because I don't know why, but like, you know, it was a big risk we were taking, I guess. But I just kept saying, everything will be fine. Don't worry about it. We've got this. We've got this. We're amazing. We can do this. You know, like everything's going to be great. Don't worry about it. You know, so I think he probably was thinking the same thing, but you know, there's always things that come along that you don't know about. You know, so anyway, and the house that we built, like it was kind of like I was the client, because we spent 10 years working on it, you know, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh no, we can't do this, we have to do this. And he was a really good designer. So he would just design, and the way that the programs work, it just, the house just kind of, it's not the same as, you know, doing it on pieces of paper the way they used to do it years ago. So, so yeah, so, you know, it was amazing being in the new house and going, and I remember going, oh God, we've done it. We had planned our lives up to that point. And I remember standing there going, and this is exactly, I'm standing in the space that I imagined that I like took all these steps to work out, and here I am, you know. And it was a really, I thought, what now? You know, so anyway, and I remember saying to my husband, I said, oh my God, I said, if anything happens to you, I'm not going to, you know, I'm worried about me, because yeah, and he said, don't worry about it, Nick. We're married and I love you and everything's fine. And I was like, oh, okay then. So, but he started to get a bit, you know, discontent, getting stressed about money, and he was, you know, like he was out of whack, a little bit sort of, you know, started to withdraw, like just something came up. I can't explain it, but I noticed it, you know, and I didn't know what to do. And so I I did the first year of Gestalt, and then I thought I'll have a break because it's too, I need to just stop doing that and be at home. So I did that for a while, and then my husband's mother got ill, and I remember because we used to go to visit her, and we'd stay in Sydney for the weekend, and she had this beautiful house, and we used to go to Parsley Bay and go swimming, and she loved hanging out with, she loved us being there, and I remember coming back one day, and I said to him, something's not right. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, there's something's not right with her. I can tell, like the way that she's talking, there's something's going skew-iff. There's something. And he was not happy about that. But he knew I was right, So, and I said to him, and you're her son, and you've got to do something about it. So Ian is the type of person that he will do his utmost. If he says he's going to help you, he will help you. He doesn't go back on his word. He's really good like that. So anyway, so he started to, look out for her and things like that. And as it turned out, she did have this, I can't remember how much time passed, but she did say to me, I've been to see a legal person, and I've got power of attorney, and I've got all, duty of care. I've done that. So if anything goes wrong with me mentally, they take over. And I thought that was an awesome thing to do. I was like, wow, that's big, and so she, she had a sense of it, of something, and she had this ischemic stroke, and it affected her speech, and it was a really hard time because, and by this stage, my mother had moved to the Central Coast to be closer to us. And she'd moved into a retirement village, and she was getting old too. And she was, and she was by herself, and she had her own issues. And so it was good to have her closer, but it was a really intense time. And Ian had to spend more time with his mum, because she was, all sorts of things were happening. She was, pretty much by this day, like every Friday night, we'd get a phone call, that something had happened, and, he had to go down there, and it was really gut-wrenchingly difficult because, she would ring me up and say these things, and, you could tell that she was anxious and, really uncomfortable, and it was really difficult, and it really took its toll on him because we had a business to run, we had a house where we had a mortgage to pay, but he was her guardian, so he had to do what he had to do. He had to do that. So I just left him to it pretty much, and kept thinking that everything will be fine, and we'll get through this, and everything will be fine. And then things started to go really skew-iff because we were living in different realities. I was doing what I was doing, which was looking after Zoe, and she was in year 10. You know, it was an important time for her because she loved school, and, you know, she was, the timing was terrible. Anyway, so, but I just got on with what I had to do and tried to keep things together at our house and pay the bills and all that sort of thing. And but it was really hard because he was so exhausted and stressed, and he wasn't putting any, he was putting all his energy into that, you know. So I remember kind of this moment of going, oh God, this is the big test of, like, because I thought when we built our house I thought, well, we've done that, so we could be able to do everything else. But anyway, this really was a really hard time. And I was studying psychology at the time because I was doing some part-time study in Sydney, and you know, he was really stressed, and it's hard to talk about, but like, I was really worried about us, you know, and I remember saying to him, don't make any big decisions now. We'll get through this, you know. But it was really hard, and there were things going on in his life that I didn't know about because he was spending a lot of time in Sydney. He was hardly ever with us, and the way I took care of him was by not whinging, getting on with what I had to do, which was look after our house and our daughter, pay the bills, and let him get on with what he was doing. So, and not bother him, you know, like try to just deal with stuff. But the communication broke down, and because it was better for me not to tell him stuff, because he could only cope with you know, basic stuff, in the sense of he doesn't want to know what problems I've had during the day. He just wants to have a cup of tea and go to sleep, you know. So anyway, but it was all falling apart. And I sat on the lounge one day and I just burst into tears, and my daughter was sat beside me, and she put her hand on my back, and I just said, I can't hold this together anymore. I can only do so much. I've only got a certain amount of bandwidth. And then things went really skewy, because I don't know what happened, but, you know, like, it was really crazy stuff was starting to go on. We had a shared bank account, and, you know, and I had my money in, but then what happened was there was no money for food. So I was like, right, okay, so that bank account doesn't work anymore. So I said, you know, I asked him about it, and he just didn't say anything. And he was saying strange things. And I went to our family doctor, and I said, something's happened to my husband, who he knew, and he needs an MRI, and there's something going wrong, because he's not remembering what he did the day before. He's saying strange things. There was a dramatic shift in his you know, he wouldn't look at me. He was looking down. He wasn't speaking. It was really out of my realm, you know. And so the doctor said, bring him in, and So I brought him in 2 days later, and we were sitting there, and he said, well, Nicole said this, and Ian said, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. It's a relationship issue. And he said, well, I'll send you to this psychologist then. And she'll, you know, would that be, and I said, well, we don't need a psychologist. That's not going to help, but I'll do it because I'm a supportive wife, you know. So we went to this psychologist, and we went a couple of times. And I didn't think it was that helpful, you know, I didn't, but I told her that. I said, I'm doing this for this reason, and da, 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 you know, and she said, oh, yeah. And I told her that I was studying psychology, and I had access to a lot of counselors and a lot of psychologists anyway, because I was studying Gestalt therapy, and I was in, you know, so I didn't want to be right about that, but I had a funny feeling that I was. So I went to, you know, because I was pretty close to his family. They used to all, you know, contact me regularly. And I remember going to this particular woman, and I said to her, this is what's happening, and this is what I think this is. And she said, oh my God, this is the exact same conversation I had 30 years ago with Ian's mum about her husband. And I remember everything about it because it was my 50th birthday. And I was like, oh God. Anyway, so we had this really weird conversation, and I left, and then I was struggling financially because he cut off the bank account, but there was no segue into a conversation about it. I know that sounds weird, but like, so I thought, oh God, like, what do I do? How do I deal with this, you know? And my mother was really supportive of me at that time because I had no money, and she gave me joint access to her bank account, and I accessed $10,000, or I don't know, enough money to you know, it's Christmas time. There was no money for food and stuff like that. It was pretty crazy. So anyway, that was helpful. And I got a caveat on, because every Friday, yeah, the bank was ringing up every couple of weeks saying you haven't paid the mortgage. And I was like, oh God, like, you know. So anyway, but he was paying it, I think, but he wasn't, we weren't talking about it, you know, and because his life was really, you know, complicated. And, you know, it was really hard for him to deal with his mum because they wanted to keep her in her house, and she was going downhill. You know, she wasn't going to get any better. It was just, and it was really difficult. And so anyway, I was like, oh God, you know, I'm so sorry this is happening to you, Ian, you know, like, I really empathized, you know, but something clicked, you know, he decided at some point that I was no longer helpful. But I don't know why I decided that, because I was, you know, like, I just never thought that this would happen anyway. So I got this job in a prison. This job came up because I was applying for a lot of jobs at that stage. So I got this job, and it was a part-time job, but it was interesting. And I got it on interview, and I thought this could be really interesting. So I'll do it, you know. So it was in education, teaching art to the inmates. And I do remember saying to Ian, you know, I've got this job. I got it. And he was like, wow, and I needed a car to get there. And I bought a car. He helped me buy a new car. And there was really crazy things happening at the time. Like, he was depressed, he was really in a dark place. And I remember him saying to me once, he goes, I don't know where home is anymore. And I was like, oh God, like I said, that's not a good place to be. And if I was you, I said, you're going into the dark night of the soul, and I won't be able to get you out. So you need to get as much support around you, the right kind that you can now, because this is going next level. And we were still seeing that psychologist at the time. And she did say to me, she said, write everything down. So I did. So I was writing notes and stuff and writing things, and he was saying things and then not remembering that he was saying it, and then I'd say, yeah, but you said it because I wrote it down here. Can we talk? And then she said cognitive dissonance. I didn't even know what it meant, and I hadn't even heard the term up until then, and I told him that. I said, well, she said that you had this, and he was really confused and became distrustful of me at that stage, because he maybe thought he didn't know who I was anymore, but I was always supportive of him. And I was always, with our daughter, I just kept saying to her, in the car, would say things to her like, it's going to be like a roller coaster ride. You just hang on. But we will get through this, She was like, okay. Anyway, but I was going to this job, and it all fell into place. I found this place to stay. I needed the money, and I wanted to do it because it was like part of my future. Anyway, so, but my daughter was really struggling in that, she just wouldn't engage in conversation. I felt this shift I felt a shift in her, and because he was really stressed. And I remember saying to her once, and I said, I'm leaving a few things out, but anyway, I remember saying, I'll go back to one of the things the psychologist said once was, we were there together, and he said, women don't understand men and men don't understand women, and until that changes, nothing's going to change in this relationship. And she said, well, I don't know whether I should say this, but she told him to go and see this person, because this person would help him. And I was taken aback that she'd said that, and I'd never heard this person's name before, and I didn't know who this person was. And I walked out and I said, that was crap. I'm not paying $175 for it because it's garbage. I'd rather go out for dinner with you. And this is ridiculous, so and I said, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done. Enough of that. So then I didn't plan it, but I just said to Zoe, do you want to come up to Port Macquarie and see how things go? Come up and was Easter time, and she said, okay, so it was a weekend, so she packed a suitcase, and because the house, even though we had this beautiful house and everything, it was really somber and sad. It just had a different energy about it, and it just wasn't the same, you know, because he had left us, you know, and it wasn't. So it was really so it was like I treated it like a holiday. I just like we got in the car, we played Ed Sheeran music on the way to Port Macquarie, and we had a couple of days in Port Macquarie, and I remember I rang Ian because I could never get a hold of him, could never have a conversation because he was always on Messenger, and I left a message and I said, Zoe's come to Port Macquarie with me, we're just going to have a bit of a break and see how things go. And I thought that was a good thing because it would give him space to himself, you know, but I don't know whether it was, you know, like, but it was, that's what we did. And then as it turned out, we were living out of suitcases, like, you know, like in a room under a house. We had a double bed. I got all the furniture off the side of the road. No one helped us. Like, no one helped us. And I didn't pay the bill to the psychologist. And so we went to Port Macquarie. I was teaching Zoe how to drive. It was like we were on holidays. And we'd go back to Avoca.
This Port Macquarie was where you were living to handle the prison job, or what was that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like and it was a few hours. It was 3.5 hours from Avoca, so it was a fair way away. So, but I was maintaining the Avoca house still, like, but I was, I had got, this is where, because what happens is I get really confused because it was really traumatic. So anyway, something happened. We got a phone call from a police officer, which happened quite a bit. And I said, I know what this is about. And then I basically told him, and he said, yep. And he said, we don't know where your husband is, but, you know, he's had this car accident. The car's here, you know, in the middle of Bondi Junction. Where is he? And I said, I don't know where he is, but I'm not surprised that this is happening because he's really stressed and da-da-da. And Zoe said to me, Mum, I'm confused. And I said, yeah, me too. We're going back to Avoca tomorrow. So we went back to Avoca, and it took me hours to find Ian. I rang, left all these messages, and I said, you know, we're really worried about you. Can you please call us and let us know what's happening? And he called and said, everything's fine. It was just, you know, I left the handbrake off and the car rolled down the hill or something. And I was a bit upset, you know, I was pretty angry at that stage because it was hours afterwards and I didn't know where it was, and I just, you know, thought the worst, and I was, you know, really affected. So anyway, that happened, and we were in Avoca by that stage. And then what? Then I got this caveat on the house, which is a document, a legal document, which means that he can't do anything with money. And the reason why I got that was because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I wanted to have a conversation about what to do now. And I was really desperate. And I left the document on his desk, and he wasn't happy about that. He was really, you know, like, So then, I found a bottle of anti-wrinkle face cream in my bathroom that didn't belong to me. And I said to my daughter, "Is this yours?" Which I didn't think it was. And she goes, "No." And I was like, "We have got a problem." And because I don't use that brand of face cream. So anyway, so then, and I felt this presence. It was like, oh God, this is next level, whatever this is. Anyway, so then we were at home and Zoe was really, a lot of time had gone past. I think it was like 6 months because she'd finished year 10 because she actually enrolled herself in Port Macquarie, the same school up there, and ended up going to school up there. And I'd had a couple of conversations with Ian, but we were living separate lives. He was in Vaucluse and I was in Port Macquarie, then Avoca. And anyway, it was really crazy. And I was struggling still financially. And, but I still thought everything is going to be fine. Anyway, so, but I knew that I just didn't know what to do, So anyway, one day we were there and I started getting legal papers delivered by, like legal documents saying that I was not supposed to be at the house. And I'm like, what? But I've lived here for 20 years. What are you talking about? Anyway, so it really messed with my head. And anyway, this one day we were there and the woman that the psychologist had referred my husband to, he actually did contact her, as it turns out. And she's a men's rights activist, quite famous and well known in Australia. So, but I didn't know that then. Anyway, knock on the door and I opened the door and it was Ian and this elderly lady in a black t-shirt. And she says, and Ian goes, "This woman's here to see you." And I was like, okay, hang on a sec, come in. So I sat down at the kitchen table and her name was Patricia Ann Luke and she was working for a security company called Security Works. And it was legit. And she said, "In 15 minutes, the police are coming and they're going to arrest you and they're going to handcuff you and take you away to jail. Now, you wouldn't want your daughter to see that now, would you?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't. Hang on, I'll just get my notebook, write down all her details, including her, serial number and all that." She had this armband. And it was really creepy, really weird, and it was horrible. And my daughter she stayed home from school that day because she had stomach aches. So she was studying in a room. She's going, "What's going on, Mum?" I said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Just more weirdness." Anyway, so she stayed all day. The police didn't come. I rang a lawyer at some point and they said, "Don't worry about it. It's just intimidation and just stay where you are. Everything's fine." So it started raining. I put her out in the courtyard because she was smoking. I said, "Do you mind not?" So anyway, and I gave her an umbrella. Anyway, she was an older woman, so it was really scary.
Now, this was a security woman, not this.
Yes.
Okay. What?
No, it was not. Yeah,
This is the.
she was
other.
working for a private security firm. Yeah, she was working for
okay.
like a
Private
and she was
detective
legit,
or
like
something.
Pardon?
Like a private detective or something like that.
Yeah, like a bounce, like it was Security Works was like a company that, you know, when you go to a nightclub and they have security,
Yeah.
she was working for them, but she was an older lady. It was different. It was different. Anyway, so she comes to the door and she says, it's about 3:30 by this stage, and she said, Ian's gone. Ian was downstairs on the phone in a really distressed state, like really very angry, very, you know, I was scared. And then she came to the door and she said, Ian's gone out to calm down and I'm going now. And I said, who's paying you? And she said, Ian's paying me. I was like, right, okay then. Okay. Anyway, so then, and I couldn't believe that it was happening because I just thought that that was the weirdest thing
Yeah, sure.
to do, you know. Then it got worse. The other thing that happened was I came home one day and all my clothes were gone. And I said to Ian, where are my clothes? And he said, I put them in storage. And I said, why did you do that? That is not, you know, you don't do that. That's not what you do. Can I have my clothes back, please? You know, like, so I got my clothes back. I got the clothes back. I had to go and get them from a you know, storage place. It was the weirdest experience. And lots of other weird things were happening then. And I was talking to my friends about it. Like I was, we were locked out of the house a couple of times. I was in regular contact with the police too by that stage because I told them what was happening and I said, look, you know, I was really grateful to them of any help that they could give me. The next day after the security guard turned up, the woman that the psychologist had told Ian about turned up with him, comes charging in to what I thought was my home in a really aggressive way. Well, actually, no, not the first time. The first time they came in, they just came and sat down in the kitchen and started eating antipasta. And I was sitting on the lounge and I was talking to my friend and I said, oh, hang on, I have to go. Somebody's just come in with Ian, you know. And so I walked over and they'd taken my clothes again. I had one dress and I rang up my friends and I said, I've got no clothes. Can you please? And they brought me bags of clothes. Anyway, so I sat down with this lady that was with my husband and I said, excuse me, who are you? And she goes, she stood up and she said, you live in Port Macquarie. And I said, yeah, I do live in Port Macquarie and I also live here and this is my home and we're going through a really difficult time at the moment. And could you please leave? Would you mind leaving? And she said, I'm not leaving. And she's got a really deep voice. And Ian stood up and said, oh, you bring people here all the time. And I said, yeah, they're our friends and people that love us, you know, like, and people who take, you know, who care about us. So what? This is my home. Of course I bring people here. But it was so weird. And it was like he was disassociated. It was really strange. And like he was a different person, you know. And I went into the bedroom and locked myself in the bedroom and called some friends, and I said, this is happening and I'm freaking out. And she said, oh God, like, call Lifeline. So I did. I called Lifeline, and I spoke to the Lifeline guy for about an hour, called Lifeline a couple of times. And then
what is Lifeline? What was Lifeline?
Lifeline is an organization of, like, it's a telephone line
Mm-hmm.
in Australia to ring, and you get a person, and it's like a counselling service, like a sort of
Okay. All right. Okay.
and they can put you through to emergency services and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I got onto this person, and I said, oh, I'm in a really funky situation. I'm here. I've locked myself in the bedroom. There's this woman here with my husband. I'm in the house. And, you know, he asked me lots of questions and talked to me for ages. And then they were leaving. So they were leaving. So as they were leaving, they were walking up the stairs, and because I could see them through the window, and I went to the window and I said, please don't come back because you're not welcome. And she said, oh, I'll be back, rah, 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 something. And it was really weird. Anyway, so then she left, and Ian left too. Then I got a phone call from a friend. She said, Nick, I really need to talk to you. And I said, and her name is Nick as well. And I said, I've had a really bad day. I can't talk to you today. She said, it's really important. I'll be there in 5 minutes. So she came around to my house. She opened up the computer, turned on the internet, and said, is this the woman that was? And I said, yep. Then I found out who this person was, and I just couldn't, I didn't understand it. You know, I didn't understand why this person was so aggressive, and, you know, it was really messed with my head. I was just trying to keep my daughter and me going, you know, like, I didn't care about, well, I did, about the house and everything, but what was more important to me at that time was being a mother to my daughter and being just being a functioning person, you know, like, so anyway, the next day, this person came back to the house 3 times, I think. The next time she came, every time she came in, she was like, I was completely gobsmacked, scared the out of me. Like, I couldn't believe that a person, another woman, could behave like that to another woman. It was just out of my... Anyway, I was really, you know, gazumped. And she was saying she was really abusive, saying really abusive things, calling me a parasite.
So
saying that
let's clarify one point here.
Sorry.
No,
Yes.
I just want to clarify. This woman was recommended by your psychologist, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so was this...
But I didn't remember...
Right. Okay. So was this woman supposedly doing some professional service for Ian and or that psychologist, or was she and Ian in a love affair of some sort?
I don't know whether they were in a relationship or whether he was her client or whether she was his client. I honestly don't know. It felt to me like it was all over the shop. It just didn't felt like they were acting. Oh, it was so weird. Like, so basically, whenever she came in, I didn't engage in conversation, but she talked a lot. you know, and she said, this is my house. And I was like, okay. And at that stage I thought, well, they're obviously delusional, both of them. Oh God, you know, like I just couldn't understand that it was, you know, I just didn't know what it was. So anyway, she had been told whatever she'd been told about me, and she obviously believed it, you know. Anyway, so it went on for days. It was so confusing for my daughter. So at one stage, because every time she'd come, I'd bring my friend and my business associate friend, and this friend of mine came one day, and I was still getting legal papers, you know, every second day, and it was an attack.
And what were the legal papers?
They're in a box just over there, telling me that I was not supposed to be. I didn't have a legal right to be in that house, and I had been to court. No, hang on, I forgot. This is because this is my PTSD, because I had been to court. I can't, because what happens in my brain is I've got cognitive dissonance. So basically, you know, it was so confusing. But I went to court because my husband applied for an exclusive occupational order.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me out of that house, despite the fact that I was, you know, had lived there for 20 years and had nowhere else to go. Anyway, so I went to court and I sacked the first lawyer and got another one at somebody else's advice. And she said, everything will be fine, don't worry about it. You won't be kicked out of your house, you know. And so I believed what she said, you know, I trusted what she said. And I said, you know, get ready, because it's going to be, I know what my husband's like, because when he goes at something, he really goes at it, you know, he likes to win. So she was young, and, you know, she was a little bit inexperienced, you know. And when we went to court, that woman was in court with him, and she sat behind me. I don't know why she did that, because she could have sat in any of the other seats. It was horrible. And I sat there all day, and I put my trust in the law. I thought, well, okay, come on, universe, you know, like, give me something, you know, like, help me out here. And unbelievably, I don't know how it happened, the judge said, I've only ever done this 4 times, but in this case, I'm going to give the exclusive occupational order to the husband. And I was devastated. My whole world just kind of fell apart then. And yeah, I could, you know, that was really hard to deal with. Because I'm not the kind of person that, because I was still of the opinion that my husband was getting mixed up, was really triggered his post, like he was stressed, so he was just acting strangely, and it was so horrible. But I remember I couldn't speak, like I couldn't get the words out, because I was just like, oh God, this thing that I thought was going to happen is happening. And I got nothing. I got no, you know, I don't have. So it was terrible. And I left the courtroom and I rang the lawyer and I told her, and I paid her $8,000 so that she, you know, I could basically I was homeless then. So I was like, and I remember saying to the judge, can I please have longer than 2 weeks? Can I have 6 weeks? I said that to I said, can you tell him that I can't rearrange my life in 2 weeks. It takes longer than that. I've got, you know, I couldn't believe that it was happening. It was horrible. So then I had a couple of days rest and I decided to appeal it. So I put this appeal together. I didn't want to take ownership of the house. I wanted to just I wanted what I wanted originally, which was to find out if my husband was okay. Because by this stage, I'm thinking, this is not, you know, it was really hard. It's still really hard to come to terms with because I was really, you know, I made a contribution to that, to our lives, you know, and it was not being, and it was going into this realm of like where I wasn't being treated like a human being. I was being treated like I was dismissed. I call it dismissed, displaced, replaced. That's a chapter in my book. It was so disgusting. And so I subsequently had to move out of the house, had to pack everything up. My husband had assaulted me as well, because after it was a Sunday, one Sunday, and I went to lunch with my friend Nicole, and she was quite supportive. You know, she was trying to do her best to sort of help me out and stuff, because no one wants to get involved. Everyone just runs for the hills. No one's, you know, there's no help. So we went to lunch and I said, oh, can you just come back down into the house? Fine, you know, so she comes down and this woman was there with Ian and they were packing my clothes into garbage bags and throwing them in the hallway of my house. And everything was strewn across the bedroom, and all I could think of was to turn the camera on my phone and film it. So I did. And this woman was saying terrible things, you know, she was packing up my stuff and kicking me out. And I still thought, well, she's obviously delusional. So I'll just try and my friend was really like disgusted, and they were having a stand-up fight. Because she was saying, how dare you do this to these people? This is disgusting, you know, like it was, and I was kind of like pulling her off going, Nick, don't worry about it. Just calm down. Like there's something about me whenever I'm in a crisis or in some kind of like I go into this other Like I can appear to be quite calm when I'm actually, anyway, so it was really horrible. My daughter was in the bedroom really freaking out, and I jumped in there at one stage and I said, everything, you know, just stay here. I love you. Everything's going to be fine. She was hyperventilating. She was really freaking out. So anyway, so I just shut the bedroom door and I kept saying to them, can you please move away? Because Zoe's in there and it's just really, this is just so hideous. And they packed up all my stuff. Then I called the police at some point. Then they left. They would just leave. That was like they were there, then they would just fly off, you know, so they were gone. So then what happened? We packed, I called the police, they came, I told them what had happened. And they said, oh, there's nothing we can do because she's here under your husband's invitation. I was like, yeah, well, yeah, I guess. But she just did this. This is what she did. She's just, these are all my clothes out of, and there they are there, and they're saying that I have to leave, and I had nowhere to go. Anyway, so then we packed up my clothes back into the wardrobe and stayed there the night. I think it was the next day. This is getting really long. We just like, it was just the like you know, I couldn't believe that, without going into any more details, it was like I had to do something about it internally, like because it was just such a bombardment of craziness. She came back again, you know, and like all I could think of to do was to just not engage in conversation and just carry on. You know, by that stage I was painting in the kitchen. This is like really gross. It was so like, okay, if she was in a relationship with my husband, that's fine. But like, wouldn't you behave in a different way? I just couldn't understand it. And so I remember saying to her at one stage, this woman, I said, I don't understand, if you are in a relationship with my husband, how you are now going to move in here and live with my husband and my daughter after you've done this to me. How does that work? I said, because I don't get it. And but she obviously thought that it was. I don't know. I still don't. To this day, I don't know. And no one's told me. No one's given me any other information about it. Apart from, like, I couldn't look. She's got a website, and you know, she writes articles for the Sydney Morning Herald. You know, she's a fairly well-to-do person, and obviously some kind of friend of my husband's. I did run into this other person at one stage who said to me, he just ran into me in the street and he said, are you Nicole Esmond? And I said, yes. And he said, we need to talk. And I was like, oh, do we? Okay, why? And he said, oh, I'm a friend of Bettina, of this woman, and I want to tell you about her, so we had a conversation, and I told him, he was a medical doctor. I told him what was happening, and he was like, oh, wow, like he believed me. He knew I wasn't lying. But there wasn't much he could do. And then, long story short, we moved out of the house. We moved into a house in another house, a rental in Avoca. I went to court. I was assaulted by my husband one night after the woman had packed my clothes into garbage bags. It was a couple of nights after. I think it was the next night. I was at home and I was cooking pasta, and Zoe was coming home from the fish. She got a job at the fish and chip shop, and anyway, so she was going to be home soon, and Ian walked in and was quite sort of strange, not happy, and I just said, I was nice, I just said hello, but I was really freaked out by then. Anyway, then my friend Nick rang up and he said, what's going on? And I said, well, Ian's just got home, and because he knew what was happening, and he said, tell me where he is. And I said, well, I don't know where he is. He's somewhere in the house. And I walked past the front door, and while I was on the phone to this person, and Ian walked back in and just attacked me, and I ran out of the house, knocked me over, like lots of stuff. I ran out of the house and I ran into the next door neighbours, and we were in lockdown basically. And then my friend Nick, who was on the phone while that was happening, had called 000, and it was about 15 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. There were police cars, and Nick had turned up. And I came out of the next door neighbours and said, what? He said, oh, what happened? And I said, well, you heard what happened. And anyway, then my husband got in the car and took off. And we went back down into the house, and it was like a movie. I just was like, by that stage, I just couldn't think straight. And the pasta was still cooking on the stove, which I do remember, and that was weird. Anyway, that was all happened within the space of like 15 minutes, and the pasta was still cooking. I just went, oh God, the pasta's still cooking. Anyway, so Nick stayed, and Zoe came home that night, and I was really worried about her because I didn't know where she was, and as it turned out, that night a friend of hers had committed suicide, and it was really distressing. She was really, and so she came in and she was really distressed and like crying, and I was like, oh God, and she had a shower, and she said, why Nick and, because I had Nick and my friend Suzanne there, and I said, oh, don't worry about it, just go to bed. We had dinner together, all of us, and then she went to bed, and the police came, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't arrive till about 1 o'clock or something after midnight, and I said, I know why, and they said, oh, we were at another domestic, and I said, yeah, I know all about it. Anyway, they took a statement, showed them what had happened. They saw me, and took a statement off Nick, and it was next level, not the life I wanted to be living at that stage. And but it you know, basically I just sat on the step then for 2 days, like frozen, not knowing, I just didn't know what, I couldn't function. I was pretty kind of, you know, and really, just, yeah, like still really worried about Ian. Like I was ringing the police saying, where is he? You know, they were getting annoyed with me because by this stage I was becoming annoying. It was like, yeah. And like, I was disgusted. I was just disgusted that people get treated that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I just had so much compassion for my husband still. And I just couldn't believe that. Because what ended up happening then was it gets hijacked by the domestic violence team of people, and, you know, and that whole scenario is no one wins. You know, it doesn't work. And I've said this on my other video because I've got I made videos and need to change it, because what happens is the so-called victim gets all the you know, goes, because the police have to take out an ADVO and you get subpoenaed to go to court. And I went to court and I said to the police prosecutor before we went into the hearing, I said, because my husband didn't turn up. And I said, well, the reason why he didn't turn up is because he forgot the date. He, you know, he's so busy and he's not coping with, he's really stressed. And so he's forgotten about it. And they said, well, if he doesn't turn up the next one, you know, like it's going to be really bad. And so I actually rang his friend and I said, can you make sure that Ian turns up to this court hearing? Because if he doesn't, it's going to be really bad for him. And but I didn't mean it the way that it sounded. Like, this is what happens. Like, my languaging was getting skewed so that what I was actually saying was being interpreted to mean that I was against him and I wanted him, you know, like, but I wasn't. I was wanting to get him some kind of support. And I went to see this friend of mine who, because I know lots of lawyers and lots of people, and one of my best friends at the time was vice president of the Law Society. And I went to see her and I said, this is happening. Can you help me off the record? What do I do? And she said, you follow these steps. This is what you do. This is how you get help for him. So I did what she said. And but it didn't help. It wasn't helpful at all. It actually just, because in a patriarchal culture, if you don't fight, you have to go in and fight. Right? And I don't want to fight. The man that I spent 20 years building a life with, that I actually love. So subsequently, this is like part of my life now, is that I found myself, you know, living in this rented house going, and it took me like a couple of years to get back functional again. I couldn't read or write. I couldn't look at a piece of paper because it would just all go blah, 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 blah. So all I could do was I felt normal in the water. I felt, you know, what was happening was something shut down in my brain and there was this other thing that came up. Like I was noticing patterns and I was noticing things in a different way. And I remember saying to because I went to a doctor, got examined and that after I was assaulted and everything. And I said, oh, I'm noticing like colors and these patterns and that, you know, and he said, oh yeah, I said, what is that? You know, and he goes, that's what happens when you've got like a head injury, you know, like that's what, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, like all I could do was swim, eat, I just didn't know what to do. It was just to live, you know, like just to live, you know. So I did that, and then and what happened with my daughter was that because she really loves her father, you know, because this change in him was really sudden. Prior to that, he was an awesome person. So she went back to the house, and she sent me a text. I got out of the shower one day and she was gone. She just packed a bag and left and said, I need space. And I was like, okay, I love you, blah, blah, blah. But then there was no contact. That was the tragedy of this whole scenario, apart from the fact that I'm in this situation, is that she didn't know really what was going on because I didn't tell her everything. I just kept her going. Like I just supported her in her, you know, let her have her life. And God knows, you know, I don't know what she's been told or what, but anyway, so she went back to Avoca, and I heard through other people, I just had to trust that was the, you know, going to be okay. And she didn't make contact with me for a long time, which is what happens. This is what happens. It's like, you know, I never said anything bad about my husband to her. I would never, you know, like I was a very boundary person. I was always, and I would always say things like, you know, we both love you very much, you know, as you do, you know, but she was, and I, you know, it was a really pivotal time for her because she was doing a HSC, and she was really, you know, she's really loved learning and she loved school. She was always because she was an only child, she just was a person who loved things like that. So she, and I had to make the decision at one point whether to stay in Port Macquarie or to come back to Avoca, and I made the decision to come back to Avoca. But she actually wanted to stay in Port Macquarie because I asked her, I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to stay here. And I said, okay. But when it came to making the actual decision, I chose to go back to Avoca, like to stay in Avoca, and subsequently lost my job at.
You lost your job at the prison, but
Yeah.
I see. But
yeah.
So you took up residence somewhere else in Avoca, I gather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In a rented house. Yeah. Got a house, and which was weird, you know, like I couldn't unpack my, like I was so disorganized as part of this. Like it was just what was happening to me. I was quite an organized person, you know, like quite a high functioning person. But after these events, I just was like, I couldn't pack my cupboards. My friend came and did it for me. And like, I had lots of people, work colleagues and stuff like that, being really supportive and yeah, and you know, and it was just a complete sort of like I couldn't read. I couldn't put this whole thing into a narrative that was consecutive. This whole chunks just dropped out. It was like, it really affected me. I couldn't work. I was it was as I call it, my initiation. You know, it was like and I was having nightmares and dreams, and it was the first time in my life that I'd encountered evil coming from a person. But I know that that person's not evil, right? I'm not saying that person's evil. I'm saying that was my projection of how I made sense of what was happening, because I couldn't make sense of it. And so that was my experience, was that I was having these really weird, and I actually for a couple of days, weeks after having to leave Avoca, I would ring up my friend Suzanne and I'd say, did that actually happen? Because I'm not sure whether it did. And she goes, yep, it did. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, thanks for that. Okay, can get on with my day now. And yeah, it was like, and like I was always, and I used to see that the other strange thing is that the way that things that your brain does, like I would see my daughter everywhere. Like I'd be on the beach and I'd see a girl with long, same coloured hair, or, you know, and I'd think, oh, there she is. You know, and then I'd see him, and it was like waking up in a nightmare and going, oh God, this is real life. And so I started making these videos, and I did my second year of Gestalt therapy, but I didn't do the essays because I couldn't write. And I said to her, can I stay here and do this, because this is really holding me together and it's really helpful, because it's the one consistent thing I've got going on in my life. And I know that I'll probably fail, but I don't care. I just want to see the year out and do this. And she said, yeah, sure, no worries. So that happened. So that was great. And ironically, she now lives down the road from me here in Wollongby, which is bizarre. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, yeah, and a lot of my friends from Gestalt who are now therapists know the whole story. It was quite controversial because, you know, that container of learning and learning to become a therapist was where I took all this stuff that was happening to me, and there was not, you know, it wasn't supportive really. It wasn't, I mean, it kind of was, but not really. It caused a lot of controversy, and I felt terrible because it was triggering everybody in my group.
Wow.
Like everybody in my group was saying, I'm so sorry that I can't support you, but the reason why I can't is because it's so outside of the realm of what I can consider. Like a lot of people thought I was just making it up and that I was crazy, and, you know, like, and you know, there's only been a couple of people, one or two people that I've told what happened, who have been able to kind of go, wow, well, yeah, I believe you. Yeah, I don't think you're making it up. They know that it actually, so, but, you know, trying to kind of bring it all together and come back around. I wasn't able to contact my husband or see my husband because of these AVOs, so, which I didn't press charge of, that was the police. I thought best to just leave that in abeyance, and it's only recent that I've been able to make contact. And so far that contact's been positive, actually. And even having this interview I sent, because they freak out. They think I'm some kind of monster, you know, but I'm just a person, you know, and that person that was, you know, was just a person, he's just a person, she's just, we're all just people doing our best. And despite what everybody says about, you know, my husband being this or that or whatever they want to project onto it, he was who I, which was that he was a really kind, gentle man who was giving the best that he had at every given moment. This is what we do, you know, but our best isn't always enough.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes our best is really below, you know, our behavior. Like, I like to think that I'm a nice person, that you know, I would behave in this way if this happened, and in retrospect. But when it's actually happening, you know, your actions or inactions or your passivity in a certain situation, even though you might think that that's going to be helpful, in fact isn't, you know, and because there's all these variables and all these, like, you know, it's just, and so it just, you know, like, took me on this path of, well, full on self-discovery of, like, of my own resilience and my own grit and my own you know, like, my own sort of attitude about, well, who am I, you know, like, who am I now, like, you know, like, and just yeah, like, just this, and masses of compassion, and just, like, you know, there's so much loss, because it was like my home, my husband, my child, my clothes, my job, all that was like, this is who I am, you know, like, and it was my persona, like, you know, I was pretty aware that I was in a really good situation, you know, like, I was having an awesome life, you know, like, and now I'm still having an awesome life, but it's really difficult for somebody. Society doesn't support, something's going skew if when a woman tries to help a man that doesn't make any headway in that regard, because I don't know about that, actually. Don't know enough about that, but like, I'm a genuine person, but I'm not interested in taking another person down so that I can be top dog, you know, like, I'm not interested in that, like, I'm not, and so this whole, you know, this thing of the way we deal with, and working in the prison too, because a lot of the guys that I had, you know, pretty close contact with on a regular basis had been in domestic violence situations, and, you know, had committed some pretty hideous crimes. And bizarrely, they were actually really nice people. They were the type of guy that, you know, my daughter might bring home for dinner one night. You can't tell the difference. We're just people, you know.
Yeah.
And, like, so it really changed my whole worldview of, like, okay, so there are not good people and bad people. There are just people, and people make choices at certain points in time which are based on their own self-interest, you know, but we all have to embody our own truth, you know, and act in a ethical way around the whole, like, greater good, like, be you know, yeah, like, try to be an example to others, try to be so that was a big piece for me of getting in touch with who I was on a deeper level around my own feminine essence, because it was really wounded and wasn't respected in that instance, you know, with those people. And my first response to that person who came into my life was that person needs a lot of love and a lot of empathy, because that person is, you know, like, you can't be sort of walking around using the structure, which is just a social construct, to make out like you're better than, you know, it
Right.
was. So you know, so I ended up doing this TV program because I went to the hairdressers, and it just turned out that, because I used to know a lot of TV people and stuff like that, and it turned out that the lady that was my hairdresser used to work for the ABC. So she said, she gave me the number of this person and said, you need to talk to this person. So I did. And but because this other person also was involved in that TV station, it was shut down, right? So the story didn't go to air. So it was, she said, no, my producer said I can't do it. So I was like, okay, fine. So I went to another TV station, and when the TV program came out, it all happened so quickly. And I told the truth, like, I just showed it to a legal person, and he said, well, if you're telling the truth, you got nothing to worry about. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to worry about because I am telling the truth. So, but they didn't actually show the video. They showed a little square, and it was on it was on Channel 9. It was a current affair. It was all, and it turned into a farce. It was like, in my head, I turned it into a comedic kind of bizarre film. My imagination started to sort of like take over, and that was how I got through it, was by accessing this other part of me of going, and I wrote a letter to my husband, and I said, I call it, I had a couple of names for it, you know, like, because I thought, well, I'll do my own therapy on myself. I'll just like see where, like, it was kind of like what Carl Jung did, sort of like, of just paying attention to what I was noticing, you know, and and just having a really deep trust, and you know, like, you know, having a really deep trust that everything will work out. You know, I went and did all these like breathwork courses. I did tantra. I did dance. I just went where my body wanted to go, because I thought, it's in my body. It's not in my head. It's in me. I've just eaten a meal and it's part of me. Now I have to get it out. So I did all this stuff, you know, like, and like, there was something about moving the body that really resonated for me. And I don't know whether it's the same for other people, but I did start thinking, I was like, wow, you know, like, this type of experience can raise your consciousness. It can actually activate a sort of something within you where you rather than going into I don't know, maybe it was like something looking after me at that stage. Like, I had to really tap into a deeper part of myself to find this third thing, I call it. It's like this third way of how to resolve conflict. You know, how to resolve conflict between people, how to deal with a situation where you know, that there have been times in my life where I've been shut down, where I've been, you know, don't say that, don't do that, don't, you know, and I'm a really expressive person, and I sort of have worked through a lot of my shame and, you know, different issues, and I want to be myself fully. I want to be able to be like that, like so I just started this whole thing, just set me on this path of really being challenged around my survival and my, you know, because I haven't got a job. I'm living off, my mother died in amongst all this as well, which was, I kind of knew that was all going to happen. Like I kind of knew that all this stuff was coming up to me all at once. I'd had a dream run, and then all of a sudden, like this really intense thing. Must have been in my astrology, I don't know, but like I just got through it like day to day, and I didn't want to become this person who's bitter and twisted and, you know, hates men and all that stuff. Like I just spent days and days, like I would drive out here where I now live, like I would just get in the car and bawl my eyes out for an hour and think about and reflect on all the ways that I had put men down, shut men down, all the nasty, horrible, manipulative, bitchy, everything. I went into all this stuff, like just, God, you know, like those moments where you miss the fact that somebody else is so vulnerable and so trapped inside their, you know, of who they think they are, and behaves in this way because they're like an animal in a cage, just, and they, you know, and they just act this way, and what we do when that happens is we make it worse by saying, you're bad, you're horrible, you're this, you're that, and you need to go over there and do this, you know, like, and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't fucking work. Like, because here, you know, like, no, you know, all these marriage, you know, the statistics, and, you know, men keep killing themselves, and you know, like, whether we like it or not, like I said this to someone, like, it's all very well to, you know, it's about time we had a conversation, and I know this is controversial, but I'm going to say it. Can we have a conversation about the end of feminism? Because it's about time. It's not doing anything for us in the Western world anymore. It's not really, it's just going into this shadow aspect. It's like really ugly. And, you know, and then, I mean, I know the Me Too movement gave women a voice and all that, but there was something about it. Ooh, I was like, ooh, no. Like, not going anywhere near that, because you go outside and look outside, and who built all those buildings? Who created that culture? Who created that town? It wasn't women. It was men. So, like, you know, so what are we going to do? Because here we are going, well, we don't like this. And, you know, patriarchy is dissolving.
The entire Me Too movement feels like women are coming from so vulnerable space, and they are like just want to, like, you know, act like a threatened dog who will attack everybody.
Yes.
That's what my interpretation of, yeah.
Yeah, it's really yeah, you know, it's just not helpful. Like it gives them something, but it's being, I don't know, there's just something about it. Like, it's really hard to it's about time we all just became like human beings and took the gender part away and came up with what I call the third thing, which is, you know, it's something about the feminine way of doing things. It's something about slowing down. It's something about going into these sacred, the mythopoetic, you know, I don't have the answer, but I have, like, I created my life around my ethics and my morals and what I thought to be the way that a person moves through the world, you know, but I missed something. I obviously didn't, there was, you know, like I wasn't, and the, you know, all the unfinished business is got to be unraveled somehow, and you know, coming to forgiveness and just masses of compassion for all the people that got involved in my drama. Of like, you know, it just, yeah, like what I've done, you know, like what I've been a part of is this icky, yucky, horrible thing of just, and coming back from that, you know, trying to sort of put a jigsaw puzzle back together. It's not an easy task, and because two people are better than one. It's like, you know, men and women working together. I like that idea. I don't actually like the idea of, you know, calling somebody else out, particularly if it's another woman. I'm sorry, but that does not compute. Like, that's not what I want to be teaching my daughter. That's not how I want to, you know, model being a, you know, yeah, like that's not cool, you know. And I've always taught my daughter, I've always said to her, you know, I said, if you see something that's going on that you know in your gut is not right, you do not stand there and do nothing. You do something about it. You do not be the bystander. You get up. You do something that is going to change that situation for those people, because that's, you know, that, and that's what I've tried to do, but it hasn't worked. I mean, I don't know, it kind of has, but like, you know, I have to do this, my journey, the way that I want to move through this, what is essentially the breaking up of a marriage. But I want to do it the way that resonates for me, not the way I'm ordered or told to do it by some so-called higher authority that supposedly knows better. Doesn't work. Don't agree with it. So like, I'm just like on this crusade to kind of like, and I've tried to speak to so many people. Like, I've tried to speak to, like, because I know some high profile people. I know some politicians. I've had lunch in Parliament House. You know, I've rocked my, you know, just through social contacts. I know some people, you know, and I could probably, if I wanted to, rock some other people's world in a pretty major way. But I don't choose to do that. I actually choose to live and just be, you know, there, you know, and so I'm just like, what has come out of this whole thing is just that I think what we're doing now is we're in this space of like creating this new ethics and this new And I think that how we create it is by doing things like this, and by, because it happens live. It's not scripted. It's not, it happens in the moment that it happens. It's we are creating, and it takes a certain kind of person that isn't going to get stuck in, you know, you have to be really in your integrity around every word that comes out of your mouth. Like, because, you know, and it's so hard. It's just so hard, because even I get really, you know, like one of the things I always think about is, oh God, you know, like if I've offended somebody or said something wrong or just said something that's part of my programming, you know, that I don't even know has got me around the way people perceive me and who they think I am. Because, like, there is a difference between who they think I am and who I actually am. But who I actually am, like, it's so hard to kind of be, because, you know, all these people, like, who are in, you know, I went to see the local politician. She lived down the road from me, and she handed me her card. She said, I'm really interested in your story. Come and see me. So I did. But I didn't end up seeing her. I saw her assistant, and I sat there for an hour and a half talking to her, and she said, well, you're not an expert in your field. And I said, no, I'm not. And that's the end of this conversation. Goodbye. Just like, do I have to be, what do I have to, like, okay, so you want me to go and, you know, be an expert, a so-called expert, but like, I don't know, you know.
No.
Some of these experts, like some of these people that are experts. And I did go back to the psychologist, and I sent her a letter, and she rang me one day. She wanted me to pay the bill. She rang me, and I said, and I was in Port Macquarie at the time. I had Zoe in the car. I pulled over. I said, look, Patricia, you have absolutely no idea what your advice has done to my life. Here's what's happening. I'm living in a bedsit with my daughter, out of suitcases. We've got no money. My life has completely changed. I've been kicked out of my house. I don't know what my future is, and you want $175 so you can do your tax. And she did. She said, yeah, I do. So I gave her the $175, and I said, there's $175. Talk to you soon. So I sent her a letter, hand delivered it. And I said, and at the bottom of it, I said, I would really appreciate an actual response. Can you ring me? Here's my number. Nothing. I got nothing. And I followed it up. You know, like, and she's still in, she's getting $175, you know, times 5 every day. I was living in a pretty awesome house that was worth quite a lot. I'm now worse off than, you know, like this, there's something's going wrong here. This is not right. This is not, and you can't get a job because I'm not an expert in my field. I'm not, you know, I've applied for so many jobs and I don't get any, I don't get them. Like, it's been 4 years now. There was another one last week. Because I tell the truth about who I am and, you know, what I've got, what I bring, what I offer, you know, like, but it's hard to fit my skills into a so-called job, because what I was doing for 20 years was being the second in charge to my husband's business and his life and his, you know, what he wanted to do. And it's kind of my turn now, but like, it's going okay. I'm enjoying it, but like, I'm really challenged, and I'm just, you know, I've had the most amazing adventure, but it's, you know, now with all this COVID-19, so it's really getting down to the wire as far as just living on that edge of not knowing what you're going to be doing, you know, in once the lease runs out on this barn. Like, where am I going to be? What am I going to, you know, and there doesn't seem to be the structure, because I'm not on any kind of benefits, right? I'm just living off the inheritance that I got from my mum, which isn't very much, but it's enough for me to live day to day. And I have to create this, you know, out of, and how to do that is by really putting on, you know, growing up, growing up. Like, I thought I was an adult. I thought I was an adult 10 years ago, but actually wasn't. I was just a child, like, kind of like, and now I can say, well, I've actually crossed that. But like, yeah, I'm still like, got a 7-year-old girl inside of me going, where's the, you know, where's, like, you know, where's the white horse going to come in and save me?
Right.
Not going to happen. You know, like, so it's really, yeah, it's just such a challenge, but it's like, you know, I have the conversations that I have now and the quality of friendships that I have, and it's just so incredible, you know, and becoming the love doctor was part of that. Was I thought, well, I'm just going to experiment with this. So and the conversations that I've had with people as a result of doing that is going to lead somewhere. Yeah, because it's quite a thing. It's just been this really, yeah, like creative thing that I've done. It's kind of like not working, but working. But yeah, like, what is it? You know, like, but it's a platform to hear people and to witness other people's experience, like myself. That's quite, you know, because people are having these experiences. People are
That's
having,
for sure.
and people are finding that, you know, you can get some healing from going to a counselor and going to a therapist. And yes, that is legit, right? I'm not putting all therapists down, but like,
Right.
but there is a limit to there are, you know, and a lot of the therapists that I was training with, you know, didn't like me saying this, but, you know, even therapists are caught in a complex about themselves being therapists. And the longer, you know, the sooner they break out of that and kind of really get a handle on these realms of the way people can be in different realities, and both of those realities are true and authentic to them at that point in time. It's you know, like, what my husband's experience was his experience, and he was in a context and he made those decisions. He did those things. That doesn't mean he's a bad person. It just means that he wasn't able to, that was his capacity. That was all he was doing the best that he had at that point in time.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there, unfortunately, I believe that there is, you know, that there are the laws of nature, and that, you know, things do come around, and everything can be resolved in communication. I do believe that. I really believe that. Like, even, you know, yeah, and I think it's important. You know, I think it's really important to have, like, I listen to Gabor Mate, Terry Real. I listen to a lot of, there's some really good information out there now, and there's like what we know about cognitive science, and, you know, what we know about the brain and everything, all the information that we have access to. We should be able to resolve these problems. you know, but it's like it really takes a lot of deep reflection and a real spiritual capacity to expand and create space. Yeah,
Yeah,
creating a space.
I think it is
I-
that.
Because we don't, yeah.
Go ahead. I'll finish your sentence and then I'll speak. We
No,
don't
go.
what?
Yeah, well, you know, like we are creating these spaces, you know, like the way that we treat older people. I just find that I'm really passionate about that. You know, like the way that I walk around the supermarket and I see some men, you know, walking around and they just seem unhappy, and you know, they're walking 2 steps behind their partner or whatever, and she's saying, come on, you know, like what, you know, like, and you know, like I just think, oh, that person who's older has got so much wisdom and so much experience and so much to offer, but you know, for some reason they're not opening that door, they're more closed off, you know, and
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
I
now
really
with-
want to.
Now with COVID, we in the US, we have people that, you know, 52% of the people that are dying are in nursing homes. And, you know,
I know.
basically the sort of attitude about it is, oh boy, that's a relief. Now I don't have to worry about mom anymore type thing.
Oh,
I mean, that's
I
kind of
know,
the
it's-
attitude that people have
Yeah.
about it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's really, you know, that was something that we can definitely do better, you know, like yeah, like, you know, I was looking back, like I was really lucky to have my mum's mum and my dad's mum living with us, you know, because
mhm.
that really probably extended their lives, you know,
I'm
to
sure
a
it
large
did.
extent.
I'm sure it
And,
did.
you know,
We have Debbie's mom living next door, and you know, she's going to be 90
Yeah.
years old this year. So,
Yeah.
Nicole, I
Yeah.
think I think you've said some very profound things in this.
What did
You
I?
know, one of the things that I want to be clear
Oh my
about
God.
before anyone
Thank
else.
you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening. It was a really beautiful space. It was,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
So one of the things I want to be clear before anyone else says anything is that
Yes,
here we're not in the business of psychotherapy. Okay.
yes,
And we're in the
Yeah.
business of being friends who are interested
yes,
in one common area. And
yeah,
so Nancy rightfully commented about a session we had the other day where somebody was saying, you know, you should do this and you should do that type thing, as if they were in a counseling role. Okay. And we're not going to do that here. In fact, you know, I had to put my foot down once in the advanced reading group because it was getting out of hand. And
Yeah.
and so, you know, I think that you've, you know, and now nearly 3 hours, you've
Oh
done
my
a
God.
you've done a lot in terms of self-healing. Okay, honestly.
Oh yeah, yes,
Right.
yeah. That is
And
true. I agree. Yeah,
and I think you've said
Yeah.
some pretty profound things, most of which you probably can't remember.
probably.
But there, but the good
Yeah.
news is this will be, you know, available in an hour or two on
Oh my
YouTube,
God.
right?
Yeah, great.
Okay, and so then you can listen to it again. And I think
Yeah,
there's,
yeah.
you know, especially the things that you've been saying in the last 45 minutes or last 60 minutes are really profound things that we all have to think about, like the idea of letting feminism die. You know,
Yeah.
something.
Feminism, the kind of feminism which has been portrayed now, it's like Khushbu is not a bad name. It's just that I am the person who don't like this name. It's something like that, you know. So
Oh,
feminism is not a bad thing, but the way
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's been implemented or manifested or experienced collectively is 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 actually damaging. It's
Right.
I feel somewhere down the line the I will come to this when I
I
will
think,
comment
you
on
know,
it.
it's the feminine, not feminist, which is what interests me. It's the feminine.
Yeah.
It's those feminine qualities. It's
Bingo.
And-
Yes.
yeah, you know, and bringing that through, and it's about power. It is about power, but it's about not using that power over and against another person,
But
Right.
but
so
using it differently.
Yes.
I
Because
had
you need the power of both.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is
I love the caption that we have, Chris. I really resonate with you. Like, yeah.
yeah, and I, like today I know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so I am a very devoted, like devotion comes naturally to me, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
it's like I don't know how many, like what Sir Skip did in his life, but when I got that, like something connected with me, I just had that profound respect for him. I don't value people. It's like God bless coronavirus. Like that is my shadow. That's my shadow. But
Yeah.
but when I have respect for somebody, it's like even God will not break it. Like I will fight with the God for that person, you know. So yeah. So one thing, I have a very similar journey, which is not necessary uh, to express right now, but which is a very on a very similar line. But I was not sane like you know. I was crying for hours. I was sitting on the pavement of the road and crying. And for me, like my friends were not loyal to me at that time, which I had a feeling, but they were the only one which I was approaching to. So when I processed it, like not because I also counsel teenagers, so um, uh, no counselor was able to help me. I was like, don't use don't use this tactic to me, and then don't use this tactic on me. Like I was telling them that. I'm like, so no, they were not able to help me, and that is where like Dr. Jordan Peterson and then Carl Jung came into my life, and then that is how. So it's like self therapeutic thing. So in all of this, one thing which in my story, which I think I want to like tell right now, which the alteration in story which I had to make is that you said that there was a persona. I whatever was happening to me, I I also felt that it was my persona, my reflection. But after all of this, something which came into my consciousness after this experience is that I didn't know that evil existed in this world. I was this 7-year-old happy girl who wanted to give love to everybody, who wanted to love
Mhm.
everybody and who didn't. And actually, I was that person who didn't belong to anywhere. So that is why little love gave me lot of belonging. People can also say she have boundary issues, but that was not the case. I love my solitude. I always I don't need people. I have dogs. They are much better than
Mhm.
they are much better than. So I don't have.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean. So one thing which I had to like tell myself that it was not my projection. It was first time in my life when I was managing to make the interpretation of what does it mean to be touched by evil powers. What does it mean to get impacted by malice and malevolence of the society? And why in Indian culture or in Islamic culture or in certain women are treated as sacred who and the other people are not even allowed to have a gaze on her. Like it made sense to me that why this culture are like, why do they not let women wear shorts? Like, as simple as that, because shorts are comfortable. You can run on it, and things like that. As simple as that. Like, 25-year-old girl contemplations of things. Like, why should no shorts? They're comfortable and windy and airy and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
but it made sense to me because there are this power who can have impact on this softness which feminine essence carries. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
and for
Yeah.
me that was damage, and I felt that I was very very disgusted with myself. Like I was hating the way I was reacting, and I didn't had any, like, there was no control over it. Like, my conscious control, there was no my conscious control. I was crying, I was getting angry, and I'm like, what the hell I'm doing? But I was still doing it. So yeah, there's
Mm.
that malice and malevolence can touch you. It can damage you, and you might not even know that that happened to you. And that is what, like, I want to tell all the women who are into this who are in touch with this, I don't know, who are not indoctrinated by patriarchy. Like, they're still in touch with um they're still in touch with that aesthetic element or the feminine essence of their own being.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
just
gets hidden. It gets suppressed. It gets suppressed because of the culture that we live in. And
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 more
so
something is
therefore,
suppressed, it will, like,
yes.
if it is a bubble, if it is a balloon and
Yeah.
you it is gonna burst
Yeah.
at one
Yeah.
point. It's gonna burst. Yeah, yeah.
It is
So
Yeah.
bursting. It is bursting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Mm.
have given you a big tight hug right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy, do you have
Yeah, but
anything?
yeah, Sandy.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, it's okay. You look like a Viking woman right now because of the shadow on your face. It's amazing.
Yes, yeah. And I'm wearing this like fluffy, like dog-like jacket. I'm wondering how you're feeling right now.
I guess it's a bit cathartic. I just feel clear. Like I feel like I have told this story before, you know, a few times, but like not in different spaces. It feels different. And a lot of the times when I talk about it, I feel strange, and I'm a bit like disassociated or something. But I feel fine. I'm pretty good. I just
I don't think that I don't. Yeah.
you know, just being in my body fully is what I do now. Like I just, because when I tell that story, it's a story and I'm in my head, you know, but I'm very, it used to make me feel sick and like, you know, but I feel fine. I feel like this is I'm in the right place now, and I feel, yeah, I feel good. Feel pretty
Okay.
good.
I don't think I would have
But
been able to. I don't think I would have been able to go into, in fact, as much moment to moment detail as you did. Like you really slowed it down for us, and
No? Yeah.
but I mean enough to like get in that headspace with you, and I thought that was really good storytelling technique, and also
Yeah, I like telling stories.
your ability to be able to actually like you know, sequence it, you know, and also to be sitting with it as you're like as it's coming to your mind.
Yes.
I think that would have been, I think that was something, and it is something that's harder for me. Like I just want to like skip over like like I could talk for an hour about incredible pain, and like and I have to move on to the next one. So you know, telling a story is really, really rough, and how to do it and the pacing to let it sit with you, and to get further into it or not, or kind of skip certain parts to kind of construct something. It's amazing. Like there's Jacques Lacan says, you know, language will always produce a lack.
Yes. Yes. It's so, yeah. Because it's the lived experience that you can't,
You can't narrate in a sequential way, right?
And I can really
that's
resonate.
so true.
I can really resonate with you in terms of like that PTSD writing block that you were speaking of, that you have to do other things to. I'm still kind of in that zone. I mean, I used to do a lot of writing, and then I had, you know, this encounter with my nephew who had the birth injury, and I kind of regressed into like, you know, that kid that was like a survivor. So and that was when my English wasn't good, and I couldn't read and I couldn't write. So something I regressed in some way, and I just had this writing block, you know, but to verbally be able to tell it, it's a little bit better. Because I guess
it's interesting. That isn't it?
The affect.
Yeah.
It's like something's weird about the writing or the reading part of after you've had like serious complex PTSD, you know, effect.
Yeah, I really became really activated visually. I just like visual stuff became like the way my brain started to put itself back together. Maybe I don't know, but like
there is so when I shared my story, I slept for 3 days. I didn't do anything. I told people to deliver food to my home. I even for my dog, like I just asked people to, like, you know, make food for me. I don't want to eat outside food, and I don't want to cook. I just had to tell this to people because I was dysfunctional kind of. And then I had a conversation with Sir Tim, and after like 4-5 hours of that conversation, I just I just cried, like yeah, just wept for I don't know, whatever was building inside me for those three days. And I put the music, I started cleaning up the house, and not sure I was dancing or I was cleaning up, or so so there was, and like, because I kind of like studying chakra system and how it is combining with alchemical process which is called healing, you know and I kind of
Yes.
felt, I kind of felt the like liberated here, kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so take care of yourself for next few days. You are way more mature and wiser and all
Yeah.
those things than me, but I
Yeah.
would
No,
have,
thanks so much. It
I
does.
will,
Yeah.
I will check up on you next few days.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Did
yeah.
your husband ever get an official diagnosis of any kind?
No. And at the moment, I did ask him in a letter. I said, this is still something I need to sort out. Can we have a conversation about it? And I think we will. But like, yeah, now that he's had, this was 3.5 years ago now, so it's getting on, and he's had time to, integrate it.
I have a couple of things that I thought about that I'm not sure were on your mind, but it was part of your story, and that there was
Yes.
subsequent cognitive decline of some sort that was genetic.
Yes, because his father
And
and his father had Alzheimer's. Yeah.
and then there was a loss of like working memory at times. And then when confronted
Yes.
by the neurologist or yourself, there was, I think, a narcissistic injury because he was already losing
Yes.
all the money.
Yes.
And
That
then,
was
and the one
definitely, yes.
thing to do when you have a narcissistic injury is to woof people away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you can basically let them go, because
Yeah.
you don't feel good enough anymore in taking care of them.
Yeah.
And if he didn't have
Yeah.
sort of masculine, if he didn't have an integrated, sort of personality, then it might have been hard for him to assert himself alone.
Yes.
So he needed like
Yes.
his shadow. He
Yes.
hired a shadow
Yes. Yes.
to
That's
do
true.
the bidding for him.
Yes.
And it might have been
Yes.
because he had to be dissociated. He had to split in order to
Yes.
carry this out. And the splitting helped him to, sort of get the job done and letting you go
Yes.
off on your own. And
Yeah.
and him kind of going into like a kind of man cave.
Yeah.
And probably, as you say, he didn't have the faculties to emotionally, affectively kind of understand that. It sounds like there was a real regression for him after his mom got ill, perhaps a re-merging of his relationship with his mother, which was unresolved issues, that kind of libidinal stuff flowing back in your direction in his relationship. I don't know where home is anymore. He starts reasserting himself and trying to find his anchor
got it.
with aggression.
You got it, woman. I know, it's like, but well, why isn't this seen? Why wasn't this seen when it was happening? Why was it? Because it would have been so helpful to me, because I was the one that ended up having to do all the work of like moving.
Yes, well, you had in your childhood, you had, a really nice, supportive, sort of like you had objects, you had things, you had a nice house. But eventually there were some things that had gone sour that you hadn't processed. So that was a repetition compulsion of sorts, that you were in this kind of Goldilocks kind of zone and that in your blind spot was the same blind spot as before, because those were your childhood defense mechanisms, is to kind of not integrate some of the problems in the family because everything else is so
Yes.
hunky-dory.
Yes,
So the
Yeah.
true. I know.
compartmentalization,
Okay.
which is
So-
your common defense mechanism.
So what we need to do
Yeah.
here, this has
Yes.
gone 3 hours. And so Sandy, I'd really like for you to take that sort of discussion up with Nicole separately by email
Okay.
Yeah.
or your own, Skype call or whatever you
Yeah,
want.
I think I'm just about done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was-
I'm just
What
hoping
about
we're not.
Jerome?
Jerome
where-
is
where
not
is-
here. No, Jerome's not here,
Oh,
but
Jerome's
Miles is here. Let's see if
Miles, sorry, Miles. Where's
Miles,
Miles?
do you
Did he
have
go
anything to say?
You're not on the screen, so I can't see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've been listening. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, lots to think about. And yeah, I think this the masculine and the feminine attributes, have to harmonize. And I think of a book someone shared with me recently called Active Hope, and it's one of the things that stuck with me is the concept of power being power with and power over, and
Yeah.
for both, and that's what we have to try to get right.
Yeah, I agree.
In our interpersonal
Yes,
relationships.
so true.
So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. No, I've really loved some of the things that you've said lately about how you have been having this ongoing dialogue with yourself with the native. Was it Black L? No. What was it you said? Black. No. What was it?
I'm in Alberta, Canada, and it's the traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy.
Blackfoot. That's it. Blackfoot.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a reason they're referred to as Blackfoot is, and I don't have the story really firm or in my memory, but there was people traveling across the prairie, and they had to at one point travel across the burnt grasslands, and they had the black on their feet as they had to travel across this, and just all the details of that story I can't remember. I have to go and look it up again, but that's why they have that interesting name, which is the Blackfoot. But they their name is, in their language, is the Niitsitape, if I'm saying it correctly. And it's like many of the, it seems a lot of the names are really, they are the people, is what that word Niitsitape means. And that's similar to Inuit, which means Inuit are the people of the north, and the word Eskimo is often used, but Eskimo is actually a particular tribe. My understanding is in Alaska. The Inuit are across the northern part of Canada, but that means the real people too, in their language. So, but yeah, in summary, thank you for your interest, and it's something I'm finding very fascinating insofar as what the history of Aboriginal people, similar to Australia and New Zealand and Canada, the United States, they've all suffered the same mistreatment, and a lot of
Yeah.
the truth of that has not, we haven't come to terms with it. And
Yeah.
in Canada,
Yeah.
this Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a report from 2015. It just coincided with my questioning, why is it that we have so many environmental problems on our planet? And there's a connection, the
With
way we've
with the
treated
existential grief.
Aboriginal people and the way we're treated Mother Earth, or there's a unfortunate connection there that we need to come to terms with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's give our new friend here, Idris, an opportunity to see if you could say something, Idris, that is profound.
I
Hey.
appreciate your courage. Hello.
Hello.
I appreciate your outstanding faith.
We can't hear you very well.
We can't hear you very well. Do you have a better mic? Or can you be closer to your mic?
Is it better now?
Yeah, better now.
Yeah.
Okay, because I removed the headphone. I want to say that I appreciate your outstanding courage through what you yourself described, the roller coaster of your life. Keeping your very, very high level of faith that everything will be all right. Your high ideals about how your life has to unfold, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. You stood like a strong rock besides your daughter. You showed enormous amount of compassion and idealism, not only about yourself, but also in your husband. Through this time and also today's talk, you have been extremely fair, objective, very transparent, very honest, very hardworking through it, courageous, extremely strong believer in love, which makes you one of the great, legacy holders of this emotion that he makes human beings so unique, so
Wow.
caring, so believer in future, in ourselves, in others, and in being connected. Because love is what actually wants the bridge open. Love is what wants windows to exist. Love is what wants telephone connections to exist. Communication, connection, continuation, future, tomorrow. These are like for me synonyms of love. So I really applaud you for that.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you for saying that. Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
I really, that's really nice to hear that. Yeah.
I live in Canada. One of the singers I love a lot and respect and enjoy is Celine Dion. She's another
me
woman
too,
who is very, very strong.
Yes. Yeah.
She has a song and it's in French, and only one line of it, the main song title, really says it all. And it says, "S'il suffisait d'aimer." She says, "I wish love was enough. I wish love was sufficient." You see, in our journey in life, sometimes we go through things, and before all those things happen, we think love is gonna actually take us through it. Love is gonna be sufficient. But in a mood of mourning, in a mood of nostalgia, she says, "I wish love was sufficient." So this is a reality that has affected you, affected whoever can resonate with that song. There are seasons in our life in which sometimes our beloved passes away and we cannot hold them with us in the biological life, and sometimes they travel away, Sometimes they get busy with their own children and grandchildren. So there's so many occasions in which love cannot hold things together. So this was one thing I wanted to share, like a strong feeling I got from your story. Another thing is there is a speaker who is quite thoughtful. His name is Muji. He says some
yes, yes.
story. He's a very,
Yeah, I
very
like him.
good orator, eloquent and kind. He says
Yeah.
there was a wise person on whom people were throwing rocks. That the wise person collected those rocks and made a house for himself. He made a beautiful house out of it, So this is the second emotion that actually triggered me because you accumulated all these experiences at the cost of real life time you spent, real hard work you did. You were living in a house of your dream. You were standing, as you said, living in a place where you had imagined that you would live. You build it brick by brick and wall by wall, and with that, even these changes that happen in your life, these are collection of experiences that with your enormous compassion, in future you can probably help many people, because your compassion is evident the way you speak about other human beings, people who are in prison, people who are in different positions, and you look at them, you think about them. And I asked someone, why did you go through all this? And she said that she believes that she wanted in the beginning of her life to help a lot of people. But what happened is that the fact that she went through a lot of unhappy experiences made her understand other human beings much better than if she had not gone through them. So she said, in some very strange way, roundabout way, she said that she went through bankruptcy, divorce, and bereavement, and different experiences, losing different very precious things in her life or people. But she has reached a point where she understands a lot of people, and she can extend her hand and help them. So this was connecting to what I was saying, that Muji was saying people threw rocks at someone, and that wise person made a house for out of those rocks. Tell me what you're thinking, because I have one more thing to say.
It's just
Please.
While you're talking, I'm just reflecting on how what I express is the message does get through. Like what I'm trying to say is getting it does it gets received, and it's just so nice to have that reflected back and understanding. Yeah. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I discuss a lot of different things with different people, and recently I was thinking, for like the age that I have reached, I was thinking a very good marriage would be where one partner would have their own place to live and I would have my own place, and occasionally we would choose to meet each other and spend time together. Now, this is not in any country, this is not in any culture, it's not going on anywhere. It's an idea in my mind. But you see, like in that kind of design, geographical design, probably there will be less of a heartbreak if people choose to spend lesser and lesser time with each other. Because that would not validate a patriarchal system in which the bride has to move to the husband's house, cutting off all her relationship with her family and friends. And it would not actually reflect a matriarchal system in which the guy has to leave his surrounding and move into the girl's house. Khushbu has something to say. Okay, go ahead, Khushbu.
I have nothing to say. Maybe it's my shadow. I am bursting out of laughter
And I
when you
have
are
nothing
saying
to
that.
say either.
Yeah.
I think with economic sufficiency, self-sufficiency of women in future, this will actually prevent a lot of, because my background is in Afghanistan, and sometimes women in Afghanistan cannot go out, leave her husband, no matter what experiences they might have at the in-laws house or husband's house. And I was thinking a good solution would have been like if they with their children or loved ones would have their own space, and then that way the husband could never kick them out. You see, it's not coming from like just imagination, but I'm just thinking like this emotional injury would not be even possible if the female from the ever beginning had her own space, and not a
You
space that
know,
disempowers the guy.
uh, uh,
I
when I
Let-
we are there.
we
This
need
is
to
a
save
whole
this
other
one for.
conversation.
No, we need to save this for
Yeah,
another
exactly.
Really
conversation.
appreciate it, but it's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Like there is a limbic resonance going on in between us.
no, that's one extreme to another.
Address
No, you
address.
don't have to agree with anything.
No,
No,
sweetheart.
anyone has to
Sweetheart,
implement it
it
right
just
away.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those were good contributions, Idris. We
Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So let me just say one thing to you, Nicole, which I know it's been a very hard time for you, but I learned something. I guess I was about your age. And that was when I went to my college 25th reunion. We've now had our 50th a couple of years back, but
Yeah.
when I went to the 20th reunion, let's I'm going to mute you, Idris, because you have a discussion going on behind you. Anyway, when I went to my 25th reunion, I was feeling very depressed because a business that I was trying to start was going very slowly, not very good, and I was struggling in my career and so on, and so I was sort of embarrassed. I didn't even know that I wanted to go to this reunion and see all these other people who I had been in school with, but had achieved success in their fields and so on. But what I found out when I went to that reunion was that everybody had been through the mill, okay, one way or another. Everybody had been through trouble, big trouble. I mean, to the order of magnitude of one of my classmates' wife had been murdered, and it was an unsolved murder, for one thing. And another one, his twin brother had had 3 liver transplants, and he had given his twin brother his kidney so that his brother could survive. And meanwhile, my brother had 3 liver transplants at that time, and he had died. My brother had died. And so it was just very interesting to me to see that we all have been through such crises in our lives in various ways. And so, I'm just saying that, like you say, we're just people and we have a life. And I think Dr. Jung would be very proud of you. You're actually what he dreamed of, I think. Right? he used to say, "Bring me a normal person and I'll fix him for you."
Yeah.
Well, your
Yeah,
last
definitely. Yeah.
your last
It's
hour.
been a good opportunity to work through my own complexes and like my own stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you know, your last hour of discussion there really tells me that you well and truly have been fixed. And so I'm with Idris that
Yeah.
that you know you have a bright future in
Yeah.
terms
That
of
whole
helping.
that whole concept of like being, you know, like we are whole, you know, and it's just that we forget or, you know, think that like
Yeah.
we are whole. And I do believe that, and I have a lot of, you know, and not a problem to be fixed.
Yeah. Right.
You
But
know, we're not, and you know, it's like
That's the
often our depression is because we think that we haven't lived up to some artificial requirement that society expects from us, but
yeah,
we can't possibly live up to it. Most people can't, you know,
yeah, yes,
or don't one way or another, right?
yeah,
And then we find out that all the rules are being broken by other people anyway, right? And so and these are lessons that I've certainly learned in tough ways also. So you know, more power to you for being able to get through that and keep us going here for over 3 hours. So
thanks.
and it's great for you, but for us, for me, I am hosting another session with Dr.
Right.
Dr. Darian Pictet in just less than 10 hours from now. So we really have to wrap this for tonight.
Skip, did you send us that
Awesome.
paper?
Yes, I sent it to you last week.
Yep.
It's called Movements of the Soul in the
Oh,
Red
I have
Book.
it. Okay.
Yeah, Movements of the Soul in the Red Book.
Yeah, I'm really liking the connections and the papers and stuff that you're sending too. It's really informative and
Yeah, and you know, you have really been perhaps the most loyal playback member of the advanced reading group, which is very interesting to me, and I'd like to talk with you about that sometime, but not tonight, because
okay.
here we're coming up on 1:30 in the morning. So
Oh my God.
yeah.
All right. Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and thank you for being so forthright and straightforward about your story. It seems to me it worked out quite well. And
Well,
yeah.
Nancy was sure quiet.
Yeah, I mean, she realized she wasn't going to get anything in. I think she was just tired, maybe.
Oh, I see.
You know, she stayed for almost 3 hours, but then she just realized that the story wasn't coming to an end. And she probably figured she could watch it on playback.
We've been emailing each other. We've been having conversation too, which has been nice.
Right. And so, you know, you should definitely continue that, because she's a very thoughtful woman, and she's helped me very much also, actually. And especially back last fall, when I was not only doing the interviews with her, but when I was doing my public talk that I did in a sanctuary called Finding the Living God. I was talking with her about that quite a lot, and she was a terrific help to me at that time. And so, you know, I know she'll have some useful thoughts, and so, you know, we'll all encourage her.
I have one question, if I may ask.
Yeah, quickly, please.
So,
Yes. Did
Okay.
you have any common friends with your husband? And if they could help you both, how could they do anything differently? Or any family member who were equally empathetic to both of you?
Yeah, everybody's skedaddled because, and I have gotten contact with some people, but they say they don't. Nobody. They ask me, where's Ian? Where is he? How is he? I don't see him. What, no one knows. No one gives. It's a bit mysterious. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's all I wanted. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
so I guess it's time for prayer.
Yeah, time for prayer, Kushbu. So,
Okay. Everybody
Uh,
good? Energy
yeah.
check.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to leave it to you tonight, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay. So while you were talking, I was very emotional. So I picked up a card which I have, which is, I'm not expert, but which is called Journey of Love, if you can see. And the card came up was Shifting Universes. And I think you know what does it mean. Normally, I think it works like that. So on that note, let's pray for the well-being of all the worlds and well-being of all the people of all the worlds. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. God bless you. Take care of yourself. We shall see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Kushbu.
everybody. Thank you, Kushbu.
Thank you
Thanks,
God bless
for
you.
thank you for a very interesting story. I had heard bits and pieces of it before, but
Oh my God.
that was very powerful. I had listened to
Okay.
your videos from before, but that was very well
Yeah.
put together. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to it. And
Thank you.
as soon as I end the meeting here, it's gonna
Yeah.
render on YouTube.
Okay.
So it'll be there
All righty.
before I wake up. Okay.
Okay.
So peace. Take care. Take care,
Peace.
everyone. Good night.
Night.